I never told anyone this story because even now, years later, I still can't explain what happened out there without sounding insane. But when I was 17, me and my cousin Darren decided we were going to spend a weekend camping deep in the woods near an abandoned fire road a couple hours outside of town. And before anyone says it, no, this wasn't some tiny patch of trees behind a neighborhood. This was real forest. Miles of nothing but dirt roads, dead silence, and pine trees so thick they blocked out the sky by late afternoon. And the weird thing is, I remember feeling uneasy before we even got there. Like the entire drive, my stomach felt tight for no reason. But Darren kept joking around and playing music, so I ignored it. And by the time we parked the truck and started hiking in with our gear, the sun was already getting low behind the trees, everything glowing orange, like one of those last calm moments before a storm. And we found this clearing near a creek where someone had clearly camped before because there was an old stone fire pit and beer cans scattered around, so we set up there thinking it was perfect. But the first strange thing happened. Maybe an hour after dark, when the woods suddenly went completely quiet. And I mean completely. No crickets, no frogs, no wind. Nothing. Just this dead silence that made it feel like the entire forest was holding its breath. And Darren noticed it too, because he stopped talking mid-sentence and looked around before laughing nervously and saying, "Dude, why does it feel like we're being watched right now?" And the second he said that, we heard something walking in the woods behind us. Slow, heavy footsteps, crunching leaves, one step at a time. And at first I honestly thought it was a deer, until it stopped right at the edge of the trees where the firelight ended, and whatever it was just stood there, because we could hear branches moving slightly, and this low breathing sound, like somebody trying not to breathe too loud. And Darren yelled out, asking if someone was there, but there was no answer. Then after maybe 20 seconds, the footsteps started again, circling around the camp slowly, always just outside the light. And I remember gripping this cheap flashlight so hard. My hand hurt, because deep down I knew this wasn't an animal. Animals don't circle you like that for almost an hour, and eventually it stopped completely, so we convinced ourselves it was probably another camper messing with us. But neither of us slept much that night, and sometime around maybe 3 a.m. I woke up because I heard Darren whispering my name over and over, and when I looked over at him, he was sitting upright, staring into the woods across from our tent with this terrified expression I had never seen before, and he whispered, "There's somebody standing out there." And I looked where he was pointing, and at first I couldn't see anything until the clouds moved away from the moon, and I swear on my life, there was a person standing between the trees, maybe 50 yards away, tall, completely still, just watching our tent. And the worst part was, it looked wrong somehow. Like its arms were too long, and its posture looked unnatural, almost bent forward slightly. And neither of us moved or spoke for what felt like forever. Until suddenly, the figure stepped behind a tree and disappeared. And right after that, we heard something sprint through the woods at full speed, crashing through brush so violently it sounded way bigger than a person. And that's when Darren completely panicked and started the truck alarm from the key fob in his pocket, the horn echoing through the forest. And the instant it went off, the running stopped. Dead silent again, and I don't know why. But something about that silence terrified me even more, because it felt like whatever was out there was still close, just waiting. And the second the sun came up, we packed our stuff without saying a word and hiked back toward the truck. But about halfway there, Darren suddenly stopped and pointed at the dirt beside the trail. And there were footprints following us, except they didn't look human. They were long and narrow like bare feet, but way too big. And they had been there the entire time, walking parallel to us through the woods. Nobody believed me when I stopped hunting after that trip, and honestly, I don't blame them. Because if somebody told me this story a few years ago, I probably would have laughed too. But this really happened to me in northern Pennsylvania during deer season when I was 22, and I know exactly where it happened because I refuse to drive through that area now unless it's daytime. But anyway, me and my friend Caleb had this spot deep in the woods we'd been using for years, way off an old logging trail where almost nobody else hunted because it took forever to hike into. And that morning, everything was normal at first. Cold air, leaves covered in frost, complete silence except for our boots crunching through the woods, and we split up around sunrise, like we always did, maybe a couple 100 yards apart so we could cover more ground. And for the first 2 hours, nothing happened except I kept getting this weird feeling like I was being watched, which isn't uncommon in the woods, honestly. But this felt different, like every time I turned around, I expected somebody to be standing there. And around maybe 9 a.m., I heard 3 loud whistle blasts somewhere off to my right. And at first, I thought it was Caleb because we used whistles sometimes to signal each other. But something about it sounded wrong, because the whistles were perfectly even, same length, same tone, almost mechanical, and they came from deeper in the woods than where Caleb should have been, so I ignored it. But then, maybe 10 minutes later, I heard the exact same 3 whistles behind me, this time, much closer. And I remember getting irritated thinking another hunter was messing around near our spot. So I stood up and yelled that we were already in the area, but the second I shouted, everything went dead quiet. And I mean, unnaturally quiet. No birds, no wind, nothing. And then I heard footsteps walking slowly through the leaves behind me. Heavy, deliberate steps like somebody trying to sound quiet, but not quiet enough. And when I turned around, I caught movement between the trees, maybe 30 yards away, just this dark figure slipping behind a trunk, and I immediately assumed it was another hunter until I realized I couldn't see any orange on him at all, which made no sense during deer season because not wearing orange is basically asking to get shot. And I yelled again, asking if he was all right, but there was no answer, just more slow footsteps circling around me, and that uneasy feeling turned into straight panic because I realized I couldn't actually see this person anymore, even though I could hear them moving. And then out of nowhere, I heard Caleb scream my name from somewhere in the distance. Not yelling casually either, full panic screaming. So I grabbed my rifle and started running toward his voice, crashing through brush and branches until I finally found him standing in this clearing, white as a sheet. And before I could even ask what happened, he grabbed my arm and pointed toward the mud near this creek bed. And there were footprints everywhere around us, barefoot footprints, except they were huge and sunk deep into the mud like whoever made them was incredibly heavy. And Caleb looked at me and said, "Something's been following me for the last hour." And right as he said that, we heard another whistle from the woods directly across the creek. The same exact 3 blasts, except this time it sounded closer than ever. And then we saw it. A man standing between the trees, maybe 60 yards away, staring right at us, except even from that distance, something looked horribly wrong about him because he was way too tall and unbelievably thin. And I remember the thing that scared me most was how still he stood, not moving at all, just watching us. And Caleb suddenly whispered, "Why isn't he wearing shoes?" Because even from that far away, we could tell he was barefoot. And before either of us could react, the guy slowly stepped behind a tree and disappeared. And I know how insane this sounds, but there's no way he could have moved out of sight that fast because there wasn't enough cover around him. It was like he was there 1 second and gone the next. And then from somewhere behind us, we heard a whistle again. 3 blasts. Way closer than before, and we both just ran. Neither of us saying a word the entire way back to the truck. And when we finally got there, we noticed muddy footprints all over the side of Caleb's truck leading up to the passenger window, like somebody had stood there looking inside while we were in the woods. I don't usually talk about this because every time I do, people try to turn it into something normal, like I misidentified an animal or got tired and imagined things. But I was there, fully awake, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing like that. And this happened about 3 years ago when I was driving back through rural Maine late at night after visiting a friend. And I took a shortcut. My GPS recommended that cut through a long stretch of back roads and then into a heavily wooded area because it said it would save almost 40 minutes. And at first it was fine, just empty road, tall trees on both sides, no lights anywhere. But after a while, I noticed I hadn't seen another car in probably an hour, and then my phone signal dropped completely, which wasn't surprising. But what was strange was that my GPS didn't lose navigation. It just kept guiding me deeper and deeper down this narrow road that started turning from asphalt into cracked pavement and then into packed dirt. And eventually I reached a point where the road just stopped at a rusted gate that was hanging open like it had been forced years ago. And the GPS still said, "Continue straight," which made no sense. But I figured I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. So I pulled over, checked my phone again, and that's when I noticed something I didn't see at first. Because in the woods, just beyond the gate, there was a small wooden sign half buried in vines that looked like it used to say something official, but had been scratched or burned so badly it was unreadable except for one word carved into the bottom corner: "Do not." And I should have turned around right there, but I didn't. I just told myself it was probably some private property warning, and I kept going, parked the car just inside the tree line, and stepped out, and immediately the air felt different, colder, heavier, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees the moment I crossed the gate, and the forest was completely silent in a way that didn't feel natural, not even insects or wind, just total stillness. And I started walking because I thought maybe there was a cabin or something ahead where I could turn around. But after maybe 10 minutes, I realized something was wrong because I kept passing the same broken tree branch shaped like an upside down Y. And I remember thinking I was just disoriented until I marked it with a scratch on my phone flashlight and kept going. And I swear to you, less than 5 minutes later, I saw that exact same branch again with my scratch mark still on it. And that's when I stopped joking to myself and started heading back. But the problem was I couldn't find the gate anymore. Like it just wasn't where it should have been. And the deeper I tried to retrace my steps, the more the forest felt wrong because the trees started to look too uniform, like they were spaced evenly on purpose. And the silence turned into this faint ringing in my ears. And then I heard something for the first time. Not footsteps exactly, but something moving through leaves in a way that was trying to stay just out of sync with me, always a few seconds behind no matter where I turned. And I finally pulled out my flashlight and shined it hard into the trees and caught a glimpse of something pale standing between two trunks, maybe 30 yards away, tall enough that its head almost touched the lower branches. But the second I locked onto it, it shifted behind the tree without actually walking, like it just wasn't in the same place anymore. And I remember backing up slowly while calling out, asking if anyone was there, even though I already knew nobody should have been there. And then my flashlight started flickering again, even though it had been fine earlier. And in that flicker, I saw it closer this time, maybe half the distance, and I ran. I just ran in whatever direction felt right. Branches hitting my arms and face, lungs burning, until I finally broke out into a clearing where my car should have been, but it wasn't there. And instead there was just the rusted gate again, now closed this time. And standing right in front of it was something that looked almost human, but too still, too straight, like it was waiting for me to come back the entire time. And the last thing I remember clearly is that my car keys, which I had in my pocket the whole time, were suddenly hanging from the gate latch, swaying slightly even though there was no wind. And when I blinked, the thing was gone and my car was back where I left it. Engine still warm, like it had never been off. But the driver's seat smelled like wet earth and pine needles, even though I never sat back down after getting out.